It's a cold March day in 2013. I was a 20-year-old college student still living with my parents. On this day, my parents happened to be out of town and had left me with some money to buy food while they were away. I had used some of the money to buy several Little Caesars hot and ready pizzas, and I still had about $60 left to get me through the rest of the week. But I had no intention of spending that money on food for myself. No, I was going to use that money to buy a game I had been dreaming about for almost a year. I hopped in my car and headed down to the local GameStop to pick up a copy of SimCity. I had to go to GameStop because I only had cash, and as we all know, Origin doesn't accept cash. I installed the game as soon as I got home and was instantly disappointed. You see, when SimCity first came out, there was no offline mode. The game had to be played with an internet connection, which may have been acceptable if EA had enough servers for everyone to play on. I had to wait for close to 30 minutes just to get onto a server to play a single-player game. Luckily, my sister who lived across the country pitied me and ordered me a Pizza Hut big dinner box so that I could eat my sorrows away. Little did I know at the time that the absolute dumpster fire of a release for SimCity would be directly responsible for bringing about one of my all-time favorite games and a sequel that I am hoping will be the ultimate city building game. So let's travel back in time a little bit, to June 1982 to be specific. A new game for the Intellivision has just been released and it's called Utopia. Utopia is a two-person strategy game where players control an island where they spend gold to build different buildings. As the population grows, the player is responsible for taking care of the people and keeping them happy. If they don't keep those people happy, rebel activity would hurt the player's score. Utopia was the start of a new genre, the city builder. Jump ahead almost 7 years to February of 1989 when SimCity was introduced. Developed by Will Wright and published by his company Maxis, SimCity laid the groundwork for all future builders to follow. SimCity was a huge step up compared to previous attempts at a city builder. Featuring overhead 2D graphics, you could now build the cities of your dreams. SimCity introduced numerous new features including the RCI demand bar, power grids, roads, public services, disasters, and the most important part of running a city, taxes. SimCity was an immersive game that allowed you to micromanage every aspect of running a city, all in an effort to maintain your Sims' standard of living while keeping your city out of bankruptcy. SimCity went on to sell several million copies and was released on 27 different platforms. It is recognized as one of the most influential video games of all time. Between 1989 and 1993, 5 new city builders had been released. However, none of them were able to recapture the success of the 1989 release of SimCity. This led Will Wright and Maxis to develop a sequel. SimCity 2000 was released in 1993 to the starving fans of city builders. Just like with the original SimCity, SimCity 2000 made huge advancements for the genre of city builders. 2000 featured an isometric perspective compared to the top-down view of the original, which gave the game a more 3D look to it. With the new view, land could now have different elevations as well as underground layers for subways and water systems. The player could now connect their city to neighboring cities with highways to grow their population and increase their trade. The following year, Maxis released an expansion pack to SimCity 2000 called Scenarios Volume 1 Great Disasters. This expansion had several new scenarios based around disasters that destroy a city. The player is then responsible for rebuilding the city to its former glory. SimCity 2000 went on to be one of the most popular games of the 90s, selling over 4.2 million copies and solidifying SimCity as the go-to city builder. 6 years and 16 city builders later, Maxis stepped back into the ring to release its next uppercut to the jawline of its competition. SimCity 3000 was released on February 1st, 1999, and in my opinion, it was the high point for the series. 3000 brought with it numerous new features. The player now had to deal with all the trash that the Sims in their city produced. In addition, farms were added to the game and they would appear on large, light industrial plots of land with low population. Power plants and water facilities now had lifespans and had to be replaced as they deteriorated over time. Players now had interactions with their computer neighbor cities. The players could negotiate business deals with mayors of other cities to either buy or sell services such as water or trash services. Land value now affected the construction of buildings. Your city could now have well-defined wealthy, middle class, and lower class areas, all based on the land value of the area. 3000 also introduced real-world landmarks, such as the CN Tower, Empire State Building, the Eiffel Tower, and more to the game. SimCity 3000 also featured a live music soundtrack, which featured mostly new age and live jazz songs. SimCity 3000 had sold 5 million copies by 2007. For me, SimCity 3000 holds a special place in my heart. It was my first ever city builder game as a kid. My sister and I bought it from the Scholastic Book Fair at our elementary school. I always loved building up a thriving metropolis and then destroying it, just for fun. Just 4 years after SimCity 3000, Maxis, now owned by EA, released the fourth installment in the series, aptly named SimCity 4. SimCity 4 was the first city builder to use a 3D engine to render its graphics, and it looked great. While a strain on many people's computers, it still managed to be one of the top-selling games in 2003. SimCity 4 was also the first SimCity game to feature a day-night cycle. SimCity 4 now featured 3 game modes: God Mode, Mayor Mode, and My Sim Mode. SimCity 4 received mostly positive reviews, however many players found that the game was more difficult compared to previous SimCity games. After SimCity 4, SimCity fans had to wait an excruciating 10 long years before the new SimCity was released. The 5th installment in the SimCity's series was once again called SimCity. During the lead up to the release, the game had quite a bit of hype behind it. The graphics were reported to be fantastic, and many fans of the SimCity series were excited to play the next installment. The game was released to the masses on March 5th, 2013, and all the hype led to an absolute dumpster fire of a game launch. Among other problems, the biggest issue was the game's need for a persistent internet connection, even for a single-player game. In addition, EA's servers couldn't keep up with the demand, which caused widespread outages, long loading times, and disconnections, which led players to losing their saved game data. In an unexpected move, EA offered a free game on Origin to early purchasers of SimCity. I got myself a free copy of Need for Speed Most Wanted, a game that I played more than SimCity. Over a year after the launch of the game, EA released a patch that allowed offline mode for SimCity, but by this time, many players had given up on the game and no longer had an interest in playing. Even with all the launch problems, the game managed to sell over 1 million copies in the first 2 weeks. After the failure of SimCity, EA shut down the Emeryville studio of Maxis, and no work on a new entry in the series has been done. However, fans of the city builder genre were in luck. Following the colossal failure of the new SimCity, a new city builder entry from a new player was only 2 years away. The good people at Colossal Order were watching the dumpster fire at Maxis closely. Colossal Order already had a game called Cities in Motion, which was a transportation simulation game. They knew that they could make a full city builder game, but didn't want to try and compete with the monster of a series, SimCity. Once the new SimCity was released and it was clear that the game was a critical failure, Paradox greenlit Colossal Order to create a full city builder game, and thus Cities Skylines was born. Cities Skylines was released on March 10th, 2015 to very positive reviews. While the game lacked some features of SimCity, it was a well put together game where players could build monster cities and micromanage every aspect of running a city. This was the city builder that players had wanted. Over the last 8 years, 16 DLCs were made for the game. The DLCs greatly expanded the game and what you could do with it. Cities Skylines has been Paradox's best-selling game. As of June 2022, the game had sold 12 million copies, dwarfing the sales of its competitor, SimCity. And that leads us to today, less than 4 months away from the release date for Cities Skylines 2, a new entry that promises, if you can dream it, you can build it. Skylines 2 is a major step up in terms of graphics for the series and looks to have even more control over your citizens' lives. Without the failure of SimCity, we never would have gotten the best city builder, Cities Skylines. I, for one, am grateful for EA's incompetence, as it brought us a much better game. What do you think of Cities Skylines? Will you be buying Cities Skylines too? My name is Gage, and this has been a TBG video. Thank you very much for watching.